How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. Not a great result yesterday, but we did see a tremendous pitching performance from none other than Randy Vasquez. Now, a lot of you guys probably don't know a lot about Randy Vasquez, but that's why we're here. We're going to break him down for you, give you some insight into how he's been performing this season and kind of why the Yankees are high on him, if he can be a long-term asset for us, or if he's a guy that should be flipped in a trade at the deadline. You know, obviously there is some value. He has a really, really good ERA, some really good numbers, but there's a lot of left of potential to untap here, and I think the Yankees will be trying to find out if he can be a great player or just a supplementary spot starter that kind of fills in it when needed, maybe not a rotation guy. We'll see how he kind of develops here. But Ryan, before we dive into Randy Vasquez and kind of what he offers this team long-term, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I think that we're looking at a young pitcher who has displayed a lot of positive qualities in terms of his stuff. He has 3 fastballs that grade above average and stuff plus in his sinker, cutter, and four-seamer, which is definitely encouraging. Obviously, the four-seamer and cutter give him some weapons against left-handed pitching, hitting. The sinker, a good weapon against right-handed hitting. In terms of his breaking pitches, he has the stuff on his breaking pitches is excellent. He has a really good sweeper, and his curveball, obviously, in terms of rotations per minute and all that stuff. But in terms of performance, it hasn't been there. His command of those pitches isn't necessarily sharp. He isn't getting batters to chase. And that seems to be issues with his walk rate. You kind of saw it yesterday. He'd get to 2 strike counts. He just couldn't put guys away. He doesn't have that pitch that's reliable to put guys away and get big outs. And I think that's costing him in terms of going out and getting strikeouts. Interestingly enough, in terms of his spin efficiency, I think he has to get better in that regard. His changeup is very spin efficient, which is sure, but that doesn't really help. You kind of want to kill spin on a changeup. He's not very spin efficient on his four-seam fastball. It's at 86%. It's killing its ride, and it's causing it to be more of a dead zone pitch. I think if he had more reliable spin on it, if he was able to get a little more loft on that pitch, I think he'd be a much better pitcher, get a lot of strikeouts, and be a much more effective arm. And I think that would help him as a put-away pitch. We know the velocity on that pitch is pretty solid at 94.8 miles per hour. And not like batters have hit his four-seamer, but in terms of just getting whiffs, I think it could be even better. He releases from a unique slot. He's kind of got a weird arm slot, which helps him. Again, from a stuff basis, this guy is super interesting. This guy is remarkable. And I think that there's a lot to like here in this profile, but there are also things he needs to work on. And again, it stems back to being able to go out and put guys away, get chases, do things well that he really has struggled with at the major league level. And he struggled with these things in the minor league level as well. But I do think there's a lot of room to improve here, but that a lot of room to improve, I don't think it's anything we can't tweak, right? It's command. It's, just a little bit of finesse. It's things that you get better at as you spend more time with the Major League Ball Club. We've seen Johnny Brito add a breaking ball, add a sweeper that's completely changed, his MLB viability. It gives him a put-away pitch against righties, and he's looked a lot better in his 2 starts with that new pitch. I think he's tossed a combined 11 innings of 1-run baseball. Quality of contact's gotten better. His ability to attack the strike zone's gotten better. So, with a couple more starts, with a couple more looks, as the season goes on, the Yankees are going to need spot starts. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to get fatigued. I think he could fill in there with Johnny Brito and, really just use this as a building block when you go back to AAA to work on a couple things. And then when you enter spring training next year with both Severino Montas as free agents, there's a chance he can compete for a 5th starter spot. And so I think he's definitely done himself a lot of favors, but I think I can agree here. It's been a lot of encouraging signs. We know he's not all the way there yet. He's not a guy you'd throw into your rotation, give the ball to every 5th day just yet, but he's a guy who's definitely exciting and definitely someone you want to see more of.
100%. I mean, look, he's 24 years old. He's still really young, developing his game, and the pitches that have really, elevated him over the past couple of starts. He's only had 3 MLB starts this season, but that sinker and fastball combination has been excellent for Randy Vasquez. Throwing that four-seam fastball 27% of the time, in the sinker about 19%. He also is mixing that cutter at 20%, which hasn't really been great. But the four-seam fastball at 95 miles an hour is producing a 143 batting average with a 12.5 whiff rate. Now, he's not generating a ton of strikeouts. He actually has a really low strikeout count at just, I think, 5.87 per 9. And he's walking 411 per 9. So, you're seeing not a lot of strikeouts, but a lot of walks, but he has a 96.6% left on base rate and about a 38.6% ground ball rate. His numbers don't support him being as good as he's been. Interestingly, I think he's gotten out of trouble a couple times, a couple nice defensive plays. Obviously he hasn't let up a run in almost 12 innings. So that's pretty impressive. Has a 117 ERA. The xFIP at 603 certainly isn't great. 15.1 innings of action. And he's been good. You know what I mean? Like it's weird though, because his numbers don't really say he should be efficient. The strikeouts are really low. The walks are high. Now he's not giving up a lot of home runs, which is good. You know, a lot of weak contact, which is kind of what he's been banking on here. But that's certainly, you know, it doesn't seem like a sustainable pace the way that his numbers kind of are progressing. But, you know, especially because that sweeper and that changeup aren't altogether that great at the MLB level just yet. You know, you kind of said before the podcast started, those are his primary pitches. You know, the changeup actually is doing well at, he's only throwing it 11% of the time. So maybe he wants to increase that a little bit more. The sweeper is generating a 400 batting average with a 25% whiff rate. So not altogether that great at just 13% usage, but the sinker, cutter, four-seam fastball have been his primary pitches, kind of using that tunnel concept to create deviation in the spin rates and whatnot. The movement there is really hoping to kind of throw batters off. His four-seam fastball doesn't really generate a whole ton of movement, negative 8% more vertical movement, but then you have the sinker at negative 10% vertical movement, and then 4% more than the average pitcher in the horizontal movement category. So not a ton of movement, but they're just moving slightly. They're looking like similar pitches coming out of his hand and then dipping and diving in different directions. So he's getting some good action on that, but just staying aggressive. You know, a lot of those young pitchers, like notably Johnny Brito, struggle to be aggressive. Their first pitch strike rates are low. They don't really throw in the strike zone. They don't force swings and misses. That's kind of been an issue for some of those youngsters. Even some of our veterans, honestly, have struggled in that regard. Luis Severino being one of them. The first strike rate's definitely low a bit. But, you know, with Randy Vasquez, would you rather leverage him in a trade right now, or do you see him as actually a rotation piece down the road? Because, you know, not enough of a sample size to make any generalizations right now or any results to kind of be extracted from his performance thus far. But if you're looking at the trade deadline coming up in a couple weeks, do you think that selling high on him right now after coming off 3 really good starts is something that you consider?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in a weird spot here with Vasquez. Like, I think Vasquez has potential, but he's not untouchable. I don't view him as an untouchable. But, you know, he kind of hints at this a little bit with, like, the movement, right? You know, he gets a lot of spin on his pitches. You would think a lot of spin means a lot of movement, but spin has to go towards movement, and the axis in which you release a baseball is going to affect that, right? Let's think of Garrett Cole for an example here. Garrett Cole has a high-spinning fastball, and he also has a fastball that has plenty of life. It moves a ton, and that's because all of his spin is going towards movement. So, you know, it's not just a high-spinning pitch, but it's also a pitch that moves a lot, and that's what makes it a dominant fastball. Vasquez doesn't have that same you know, spin efficiency in terms of, you know, the spin axis in which he releases the baseball. It's kind of inconsistent. Sometimes he'll throw a really good four-seamer. Other times he'll throw a really bad one. That seems to be a mechanical thing. If the Yankees can smooth out those mechanics, man, I think there's a lot to like here. I feel the same way about Johnny Brito, not in the sense of like he's a guy with a lot of spin that, you know, you need to iron out the spin efficiency, but more so that it's a mechanical thing and that it's one of those things that you feel like you can iron out. You know, he's thrown some really pretty four-seamers in his starts, and you're like, wow, that four-seamer is incredible. It's got plenty of ride. You know, it plays well up in the strikes, and you're like, this is a good pitch. And then, you know, throws the same one to a different hitter, and it doesn't have that same vertical life. It doesn't play up in the zone that well. It has a little too much dip, and, you know, it goes right into the barrel of a hitter, and you're like, all right, so this pitch isn't as good as I thought it was. And that's unfortunate because, again, I really do think that he can develop a pretty good four-seamer, but, you know, I think he's got to get there. I think he's got to improve in that regard. From a trade standpoint, you know, if it comes down to Randy Vasquez to make like a move that you think is important, you know, I'm not saying Randy Vasquez for like Tommy Pham, but like, you know, Randy Vasquez for, you know, a guy with multiple years of control. Sure. Yeah, no, that's a move you make. You know, he's not untouchable, and you go, you know, you still have Johnny Brito, and you have guys like Will Warren, who actually pitched really well yesterday in AAA. And you have Clayton Beeter as well, who's still working his way through AAA. You have a plethora of guys at AA. You have Richard Fitz. You have you have guys such as at the lower levels like Drew Thorpe. You also have Chase Hampton. There's just no way I was going to forget Chase Hampton on this conversation. I love that guy. But, you know, end of the day, I feel like a lot of the things that Vasquez struggles with, you can fix. I think a lot of the spin efficiency issues are mechanical and consistency related. Like, you'll see him like completely. He's got a crossfire kind of action too. So, you know, you kind of feel like sometimes he's just misfiring. Like, you'll see him throw he's thrown a couple of fastballs with like cut. It's kind of weird. He's a very just weird pitcher. I think that's the best way to describe Randy Vasquez. He's weird. And weird can be good. Weird can be, you know, he can be effectively wild. But, you kind of want him to be consistent in the sense of you want him to feel like he has confidence throwing a certain pitch and knowing that it's going to give him the consistent movement he's looking for. Like, for example, in this at bat to Gunnar Henderson, he throws a 95-mile-per-hour fastball, like right down the middle for a swing and a miss. But he also threw a 92-mile-per-hour fastball that didn't have as much vertical life and, looked more like it had cut. It was a really weird pitch. It's just inconsistent, right? Movement is good. Being effectively wild can work, but, you want to throw your four-seamer knowing it's going to have vertical life and work up in the strike zone and not, stay flat and get absolutely shelled, right? Those are situations where, as you mentioned, you'll see ERA regression and you'll see him not be able to get out of certain jams. He puts himself in a lot of jams. He puts himself in harm's way a lot of times, and he's been fortunate enough to get out of it, but over the course of a full season, he would not be as fortunate. So, not untouchable. A lot of upside, still thinks he needs to work on, but a lot of that's related to just mechanics and like just being a little bit more consistent. And that's something that I think they can work on, as they get more time with him at the major league level and potentially even in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, time will tell if he can be an above average starter or even an average starter at that. We need to see more of a sample size, of course. But like you said, that erratic kind of nature has served him well up to this point, but he needs to be more consistent in specific areas and continue to round out his game. But guys, I'd love to hear perspectives below on Randy Vasquez. Definitely an interesting young player that could be an impact starter for the Yankees down the line. He has the longevity. They took him out yesterday after just 75 pitches, what kind of seemed like a mistake. They went to Nick Ramirez, trying to put the lefty kind of situation here maybe. And then, of course, Ramirez gave up 3 earned runs immediately. So maybe that was a bad decision on Boone's part, or maybe they just didn't feel like Vasquez had much left in the tank. They didn't want him going through the third, through the lineup a third time to kind of, after they've seen what he's got. Maybe he's kind of a 2 lineup type of guy, get through it twice and then, take him out, let the bullpen take over, since the bullpen has been so good for the Yankees this year. Yesterday just kind of was an off day for them. It happens. We move forward to today with the finale of a 4-game series against Baltimore with Luis Severino on the mound. A good opportunity for him to bounce back after a pretty tough start this season. We need Sevy to be at the top of his game. So we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Give you guys the breakdown, of course, and some new news. If anything drops for you, make sure to like and subscribe as always. We'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.